Hashtag GameFreak has been trending all over Twitter, and after doing tons of research, I'm quite frankly shocked about what...
Well, imagine my shock.
Nationaldex situation where these games don't have every Pokemon possible coded into them. So even if, Pokemon games, you can't always catch every Pokemon in them anyway.
Meaning only 48% of all Pokemon are available, despite them leading us to believe that just some Pokemon have been cut.
But also I wanted to talk about the hashtag GameFreak in this video.
However, Game Freak has now officially lied to us about something of massive proportion for the Sword and Shield games.
Pokemon Sword and Shield. It's a wonder how we got here. The new games have underwent a lot of controversy because not only did Game Freak lie, they lied about the physical limitations of the graphics, they lied about what they were implementing, and they lied that they were creating new models from scratch. They lied and lied. And not only that, Pokemon Sword and Shield sucks. But why does it suck? I thought today would be a good day to review exactly how it all went so wrong. The best part of Pokemon Sword and Shield is probably the fan art, not even the game itself, of the Scottish new Pokemon trainer, the duality of man. Before we look at the screenshots that I've collected, explaining how Sword and Shield went so wrong, well, let's just compare the animations, okay? Now, like many of you, I have been a long-time Pokemon fan. I grew up with it, as did a lot of children. Many of us can remember Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Red. When it first came out, it was brand new. The Pokemon Show, back when it was good. I've long since stopped playing the games, stopped watching the show, because it's become so tiresome. It's become trash. They keep coming up with increasingly absurd mechanics. Mega Evolution, this and that. I don't even know what they're called at this point. So let's take a look at one of the oldest Pokemon games, Pokemon on the Nintendo 64 versus Pokemon Sword and Shield. How far have the quality of the animations come? Well, let's see. So the first thing you'll notice is how stiff walking around actually is in this game. The camera movement is slow. The character moves stiffly. It's honestly not too impressive. But probably the worst offender is the battle animations. Okay, so here's a perfect example of how bad the animation quality is. Here you see Double Kick on the Nintendo 64. As you can see, there's a lot of animations involved. And they look pretty cool. It's stylized. It's not the most advanced thing ever, but neither was the Nintendo 64. Now look at it in this game. Double Kick. Did you see that? Did you see that? Look at the quality. Look at it. It doesn't even move. The animation just jumps. It literally just jumps. There's literally no effort. No effort at all in these double kicks. The animation is atrocious. But how did we get to this point? We're going to start off with this screen cap here. I've had this idea in my head for some time now, like maybe a year or so, about what the flying fuck happened at Game Freak this past decade, and after doing some research, I think I found one of my biggest answers. Satoru Iwata. The story's been told a million times over at this point, but just a refresher. When Gold and Silver were still in development, Game Freak were in a panic because they wanted to include Kanto, but because they knew jack shit about compression, it was basically impossible for them. Enter Iwata, who single-handedly included practically all of Kanto, save a few areas due to limitations at the time, because he knew more about the Game Boy cartridge compression than the entire staff working on the games. With that in mind, I looked up Iwata's involvement in the entire main series of the games, and this is what I found. Mr. Iwata is credited as Special Thanks, Red/Blue, Gold/Silver, Producer, Crystal, Executive Producer, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Diamond, Platinum, Diamond and Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black, White, and Black and White too. Iwata had a hand in every single game up until Gen 6, with X and Y in 2013, which is around the time that Iwata started having health issues with his bile duct, which sadly took his life in 2015. This was the beginning of the end, and it's all been downhill from here. Without Iwata, Game Freak is now operating similarly to their early Gen 1 in 2 days, and for those of you who know how those games are coded, that is nothing short of terrifying. So Game Freak owed everything it was to Mr. Iwata. He was the heart and soul of these games. And now that he's gone, the games have become trash. And it's funny because After Black and White, that was pretty much when I lost interest in the series. Here is the crazy thing about Pokemon Sword and Shield, and something we're going to take a look at here. I have this other screen cap that shows how Game Freak lied. We can have all the Pokemon. That would be too much work. It would take too much effort to put all of the Pokemon models in the new game because we have to create the new models from scratch. Well, guess what? People did the digging. And guess what? They're using the same old models from the 3DS. So that was a lie. Game Freak straight up lied. They lied to their viewers, they lied to everyone. Now, someone compared the Pokemon Sword full first playthrough to Death Stranding all cutscenes full game movie. Right. So, someone took an entire playthrough of Pokemon Sword and Shield and compared it to just the cutscenes from Death Stranding. The cutscenes alone. And guess what? The playthrough of Sword and Shield took 8 hours. All of the cutscenes from Death Stranding, not the gameplay, not the game, took 9 hours. Talk about a lot of content. So Pokemon Sword and Shield have received high reviews on video game websites, once again proving that video game critics are absolute jokes. On Metascore, they gave it 81 and 81 respectively. What is the user score? Oh, I wonder. So the user score for Pokemon Shield is 3.6. The user score for Pokemon Sword is 3.7. And notice, it's 20 critics versus thousands of people. There's been problems with the game as well. Death Chaos says, game crashed on an attempted autosave, or at least I assume so. Then the game crashed on boot, so I put it in the Smash Cart to test. Smash Cart crashed on boot too, so I rebooted my Switch. Here, a user by the posting name of Gyan Gyuka says, Pokemon Sword bricked my console. And here's a picture of it destroying the console. So all of this is because of Game Freak, and we're going to take a little dive into why Game Freak is terrible with this final screen cap that I've collected. Game Freak sucks at making games, aka why Pokemon deserves better devs. So this goes into why Game Freak sucks now, and presumably why the new Pokemon games suck now. It isn't just Mr. Iwata being gone, it is literally because Game Freak is full of incompetent, greedy fools who care more about money than making a good game. Make no mistake, the new Pokemon Sword and Shield is not worth buying. It is trash compared to its predecessors. Now let's look at what Anonymous has to say. The Wild Encounters file is over 400 megabytes because of it, and that's about 350 megabytes more than it needs to be. So these people are so bad at compression that the Wild Encounters file is about 7 times bigger than it needs to be. How incompetent are you? Also, it's not just Lily, it's everybody. Literally every single area in the game has a file containing the models used in that area. The Lily that appears in Cookie's house, the Lily that appears on Route 1, the Lily that appears at the school, the Lily that appears at Halloween City. Every single route, city, or building that has a Lily appear in it has its own Lily model with textures and animations for no logical reason. So this does sound like sheer incompetence. I'm not a programmer, so I can't say for sure, but it sounds like that instead of using a single reference file that's not overbloated than it needs to be, but it sounds like instead of a single reference file and a single Lily, right? Like you go in one area, there's a Lily, it references the same file. You go into another area, there's the Lily, and it references the same file. They're making separate brand new files to reference, including the model, textures, and animation for every single Lily. I don't have to be a programmer to see that's insane. Game Freak has the most incompetent programmers in the fucking industry. See this ground texture? It's used all over the game. Now, someone with common sense might have this texture in the game only once, because logically, this file would only need to be in the game once. Just reference it for every time it needs to be used. But not Game Freak. An overworld texture like this has a fuck ton of duplicates in the data. Why? Because instead of referencing this one texture for every time it needs to be used, the texture gets copied and pasted for each area that uses it. So Howlee would have its own copy of this texture, and the route above would have its own copy of this texture, and so on and so forth, even though it's the same fucking texture. Oh, here's a fun fact. Did you know that certain cutscenes use their own data? Use their own area data instead of using the pre-existing data? even though the cutscene version and the gameplay version look exactly the same. How? Oh, Game Freak. You are terrible. The code encrypts and decrypts over 100 times. So that means it checks the code 100 times before it runs? For every Pokemon that goes in a battle? I think it's basically like this. When any value of a Pokemon is viewed or written in any context, such as ball type, HP, etc., the code is decrypted, then re-encrypted. So when a Pokemon is generated, like in a wild encounter, it is constantly encrypting and decrypting until the game decides that the Pokemon is fully generated, when instead, and I'm no coder, the game could just decrypt, write and display everything at once, then encrypt again afterwards. So imagine you're making a recipe from a book. The easy and logic way would be to keep the book open on the table while you're making the recipe. Now for the Game Freak way, you would have to take the book out of the bookshelf, read a step, then put the back on the shelf, and then repeat this process for all steps of the recipe. So this was revealed by a Michael on Twitter. Pokemon data manipulation is super inefficient. Full decryption plus encryption for every getter plus setter. Huge waste of CPU time. So not only is the game bloated, not only is the game poorly optimized, it's incredible how much of a mess this is. Incredible. Anon says, "Hey guys, remember how Pokemon used to defend only having one save slot per game by saying, well, it's because Pokemon games are so massive that they can't fit more than one save on it. And yet, here we are, fucking decades later, with the game still only having a single save slot. Wait, what? Is that seriously what people said? Well, it was true. Game Freak said in interviews that the choice was between multiple save slots and nicknames, and they chose the latter. That reason doesn't work now, and hasn't for a long time though." So here at the bottom, and this is where we basically conclude our exposing of Game Freak and their incompetence. So this was how badly. Remember we mentioned earlier how the first Pokemon games were horrifically coded, largely by Game Freak. Right, they are the ones who coded this like trash. And all of these years later, presumably, a lot of the same people are still coding like trash. Well, let's just take a little look at how horrific their coding was back in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. Leech Seed and Toxic went off the same damage calculator. When they were stacked, making Leech Seed drain double the damage, Toxic deal double damage. The damage Leech Seed drained every time you reached the end of the turn. So these are all glitches. These are all not intended. Toxic turned into normal poison if you switched out while under the effects of it. Critical hits were based off speed, making fast sweepers do insane amounts of crits. Insta-kill moves were based off speed, making them totally useless because they were on slower dudes. Due to a glitch, focus energy cuts your critical hit rate by 75% instead of doubling it like it's supposed to do. So you do focus energy, and it's supposed to double your chance of doing a critical hit. Instead, it cut it by 75%. Now it makes sense. I remember a long time ago playing Pokemon Yellow, and I would use focus energy, and every single time I used it, it would seem like I never got a critical hit. Now I know why. Criticals would ignore stat ups from both parties rather than just the target. 3 sword stances would do more damage than a critical, resulting in hilariously lack-sacking scenarios. So there's a bunch in here. Let me pick out some of the funniest ones. So if an OHKO move managed to hit you, because the accuracy on those moves were really low, but if it managed to hit you, you could use counter to insta-kill your enemies. You had to save every time you wanted to switch boxes. If you killed someone with a hyper beam, you don't have to recharge. So this one's funny. If you stat up too high, your stat would roll over into hilarious low numbers. So let's say you're pumping up that attack with Sword Stance, and you're getting up there. If you go too high, it rolls back into a low number. That's hilarious. If you use Substitute with only 25% HP left, you'll kill yourself. Oh my god. So Rage. The way Rage used to work was, as soon as Rage lands a hit, it just keeps raging until it dies. Not only that, if it misses one time, the accuracy becomes 1/256. So if you miss your rages, it'll never hit again, and it'll keep doing it until it dies. So when a Pokemon's HP is 250 or 511 below its max HP, recovery moves will fail. Don't ask, just don't. Multi-hit moves use the same number for damage. If one hit criticals, they all will. Ha 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 ha, the special stat. So, here you can see the coding in the original Pokemon games were a nightmare. Now we're back to the nightmare. And that's how it is. That's how it is, folks. This is why Pokemon Sword and Shield sucks. We lost everything that used to make the games great, including Mr. Iwata, and now we're just left with a slobbering disappointment that is Game Freak. On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer. But in my heart, I am a gamer. Satoru Iwata, 1959 to 2015. Rest in peace, Mr. Iwata. He was truly a legend, and honestly, without him, Pokemon will never be the same. The new Sword and Shield sucks because Iwata is gone and Game Freak is truly incompetent, as you've probably seen from everything we've looked at. But you know what, my friends, that's merely the obvious. Well, that's all for now, folks. What do you think about... Now, I understand that not everyone, there's a lot of Zoomers, probably, in my audience. You probably never played Pokemon. It's okay. Now, for those of you that have, for all the 30-year-old boomers, the boomers, and the millennials, what do you think? Okay, for the Pokemon fans out there, what do you think about what's happened to the games? It's truly disappointing, and as apparently I'm always ahead of the curve, I stopped playing just when it all went to shit. I'm really not surprised, but be sure to let me know what you think. As always, if you want to support the content that I make, you can join me on Patreon or Subscribestar for as low as $1. Doing so will get you access to Fight Club, a private Discord server. There's also PayPal and Bitcoin options if you're interested. A special thanks to those who share my videos, it helps a lot, as it's one of the things that helps the channel grow. As always, thanks for watching. This has been Mr. Obvious, and I'll see you all next time.